Time to hit the road. Turn right. Keep right, and then turn right. Turn right.
Good evening, everyone. This is John Cap with the Freightliner FLB with the Detroit Series 600 and a 10-speed Eaton Transmission. We're gonna begin with where I bought that old one at. So which is in Redding, California. So we're gonna go get the first load. And before we get started, so let's go for a ride and get our first load. So I will tell you that in about 90 miles. No. So anyway, let's go for a ride, everyone.
Turn left. Go straight on. Keep right, and then turn right. left. Keep right, and then continue straight on. Go straight on. left.
spend more time here than our actual.
This is a house.
Yeah,
Ferdinand King.
yeah, house. There you go.
Ferdinand King House.
First, this newscast. Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Ryland Barton. There are just 5 more hours until the federal government potentially shuts down after Congress didn't reach a compromise. One short-term effort to fund the government has failed tonight, and another appears to be headed that way. Democrats want more funding for health care, but GOP Senate Leader John Thune says now is not the time.
And as I've said before, we're happy to sit down with them and talk about the concerns they have, the issues they have with, for example, the premium tax credits. But you got to do that. You can't do that in the context of a hostage situation.
Oregon Democratic Senator Ron Wyden says Republican leaders refuse to consider Democrats' requests for compromise.
We want to work with people. We've been trying to work with people. We understand the consequences of what happens, but we've got to be met halfway.
The Trump administration is blaming Democrats for the likely shutdown in messaging to federal employees. On the Department of Housing and Urban Development website, a red banner warns, quote, "The radical left are going to shut down the government and inflict massive pain on the American people." Unions representing federal employees have sued the Trump administration over its threats to fire federal employees if there's a government shutdown. NPR's Andrea Hsu reports.
The lawsuit stems from a memo that the White House Office of Management and Budget sent to federal agencies last week. It told agencies to consider sending layoff notices to federal employees working on programs or activities that aren't consistent with the president's priorities in the event of a government shutdown. The 2 unions behind the lawsuit together represent more than 800,000 federal employees. They argue that the threat of layoffs is, quote, an unlawful abuse of power designed to punish workers and pressure Congress. They've asked a federal court in San Francisco to find that the Office of Management and Budget unlawfully exceeded its authority in issuing the memo and to invalidate actions that come from it. Andrea Hsu, NPR News.
President Trump says the administration has reached a deal with Harvard over more than $1 billion in federal funds. NPR's Alyssa Nadworny has more.
Trump told a room full of reporters at the White House the administration's in the final stages of a deal with the Ivy League school.
I guess we reached a deal with Harvard today, so we'll see how that. What you have to do is paper it, right, Linda?
Yes, sir.
Paper it out.
He's referring there to Education Secretary Linda McMahon. When asked for details, Trump caveated a bit, saying that they were getting, quote, very close to finalizing the terms. He did say Harvard would pay $500 million and fund trade schools in exchange for the reactivation of federal research funding, and so that, quote, their sins are forgiven. Officials at Harvard have not commented on the deal. Alyssa Nadworny, NPR News.
Stocks closed up today. The S&P 500 closed up 27 points to 6,688. This is NPR News in Washington.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gail DeLauder. Harris County leaders and emergency preparedness officials are encouraging people to stay vigilant through the rest of hurricane season. Harris County Judge Lina Hidalgo says recent funding barriers could hurt the county's efforts to prepare for emergencies. She points to Harris County Commissioner's recent plans to bridge a $200 million budget deficit.
And of course, there are certain things in the budget that was just passed that can have an impact on our emergency response efforts. But there are also a lot of positive things that we had done before and that remain in place.
Hurricane season ends November 30th. A Citizens Redistricting Committee is recommending 5 new district maps to Fort Bend County Commissioners. News 88.7's Natalie Weber tells us more.
4 of the maps were designed by the Redistricting Committee. Committee members say the maps were designed to make the county as competitive as possible without giving one political party the majority. One map was designed by a local resident, Chris Pino. His map includes 1 strong Democratic Commissioner precinct, 1 Republican precinct, and 2 competitive precincts. Here's Pino speaking to the committee.
I think that we can all agree that foreseeably a map like this could be voted on bipartisanly. And I don't want us all to be in our partisan corners.
Commissioners have not yet selected a day to vote on the proposed maps. They'll meet again next week. From the Fort Bend County Bureau, I'm Natalie Weber, News 88.7.
Concerned citizens and local officials gathered near Brays Bayou this morning to talk about the number of bodies found in Houston bayous. 6 bodies have been found in local bayous over the past 2 weeks. A total of 15 have been found so far this year. Houstonians in today's meeting say they want the city to be more transparent about what's happening. Overnight low expected around 73 degrees. Tomorrow, mostly sunny, high around 93. And for Wednesday night, mostly clear skies, low around 75. Thursday, expecting a high near 94. I'm Gail DeLauder, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include 20th Century Studios with Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere, a pivotal chapter in the life of an icon, starring Jeremy Allen White and Jeremy Strong. In theaters October 24th. Tickets available now.
It's All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Scott Detrow in Washington.
And I'm Elsa Chang in Culver City, California. President Trump told hundreds of top military commanders this morning that the U.S. military would be used against the, quote, enemy from within. He pointed to Democratic-run cities, which he has long said are dangerous because of high crime rates. And Trump said this.
Together we're reawakening the warrior spirit. This is a spirit that won this nation, and from the cavalry that tamed the Great Plains to the ferocious, unyielding power of Patrick Bradley and the great General Douglas MacArthur. These are all great men.
Now that echoes language often used by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who also spoke to the generals and admirals in Quantico, Virginia today. Hegseth reiterated that the purpose of the department that he leads would exclusively be, quote, warfighting. Joining us now to talk about all of this is NPR Pentagon correspondent Tom Bowman. Hi, Tom.
Hey, Elsa.
Okay, so before we get to the president, what stood out to you about the remarks from Hegseth?
I guess what he said about toughening physical fitness standards for those in combat jobs who are talking armor, artillery, infantry, and he said he wants men and women to achieve, quote, the highest male standard in such things as, lifting weights, dragging a sled that stands in for a wounded comrade, carrying an ammo box, running. So in general, more weight, more pull-ups, faster times.
Okay.
Now, there are some 600 female Marines in those jobs, roughly 3,000, 4,000 Army women in combat jobs. One Marine officer I spoke with who's well-versed on fitness tests estimated you could lose more than 20% of women in those jobs if they have to meet the highest male standard. The officer spoke on condition of anonymity because he's not authorized to speak publicly. Hegseth said, listen, that is not my goal. Let's listen.
If women can make it, excellent. If not, it is what it is. If that means no women qualify for some combat jobs, so be it. That is not the intent, but it could be the result. So be it.
No, Hegseth also said, it may mean weak men don't qualify.
Sure. Okay, another thing. Hegseth has long criticized what he views as the Pentagon's quote-unquote woke culture. What did he say about that today?
Right. He said the Pentagon was the Department of Woke, and now it's the Department of War. He said he's ending the war on warriors and saying that some were promoted for their race or gender, and those in the military will be promoted on merit. Of course, he fired the Joint Chiefs Chairman, General C.Q. Brown, the second African-American to hold the job, indicating he got the job not on merit, even though Brown was a key figure in the defeat of the Islamic State, which happened during President Trump's first term, and Trump keeps bragging about that. Now, Hegseth also thinks overall the military has not been tough enough. Too many lawyers second-guessing troops on rules of engagement in war or bullying and hazing of troops. He also wants drill sergeants to be much more tough on recruits.
Okay, moving on to President Trump, whom I know has spoken then defended his use of U.S. troops in American cities. So what exactly did he say about that?
Well, Trump said he told Defense Secretary Hegseth that the U.S. should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military, saying mostly Democratic-run cities have high crime rates. Of course, the president is sending troops to Portland, Oregon, and Chicago, taking control of those Guard troops and the state governor. Now, Trump's comments were denounced by Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island, top Democrat in armed services and an Army veteran. He called it dangerous, treating our own communities as war zones and our own citizens as enemies.
Well, let me ask you, Tom, how woke do you think the military is?
I think it's mostly a caricature. People I've spent time with in combat zones tell me, listen, we've always had a warrior ethos. I don't know what this is about.
That is NPR's Tom Bowman. Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
Betting on sports is now a legal and thriving industry in 39 states, and that is alarming the public health community. Because even before sports betting took off, 1 to 2% of Americans already struggled with a gambling disorder. Karen Brown at New England Public Media has more.
When visitors walk into the MGM Casino in Springfield, Massachusetts, they may notice off to one side the GameSense office. That's a state program to curb problem gambling. There, an employee gives out free luggage tags to get people to stop by. They give out the gambling helpline number, and they can help customers set monthly spending limits if they want.
That's a big movement in 12 years.
Mark Vanderlinden oversees the GameSense program for Massachusetts. He says when the first casino opened, they were just starting to tackle gambling problems.
It was much more about making sure that there are brochures that are available that explain the odds of whatever game it was.
Now, gambling companies have to follow some rules, like no sports betting on Massachusetts college teams and no gambling by credit card. But there's no federal guidance or national commission like they have in other countries. So Massachusetts, like every state, is on its own to regulate the industry, especially now that sports betting apps allow you to gamble anywhere and anytime.
The sophistication and complexity of betting has become staggering.
That's U.S. Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut. He's co-sponsor of the Safe Bet Act, which would impose federal standards on sports gambling, like no advertising during live sports and no tempting bonus bet promotions.
States are unable to protect their consumers from excessive and abusive offers and sometimes misleading pitches. They simply don't have the resources or the jurisdiction.
The gambling industry is lobbying against the bill. Joe Maloney is with the American Gaming Association. He says federal rules would be a slap in the face to state regulators.
You have the potential to just dramatically, one, usurp the state's authority, and then two, freeze the industry in place.
He says the industry acknowledges that gambling is addictive for some people, which is why it developed a model called responsible gaming. That includes messages warning people to stop playing when it's no longer fun and reminding them the odds are very low.
And there's very direct messages such as, you will lose money here.
But public health leaders say the industry's responsible gaming model just doesn't work.
You need regulation when the industry has shown an inability and unwillingness to police itself.
Harry Levant studies gambling policy at Northeastern University in Boston. He says the industry approach puts all the blame and responsibility on individuals.
You can't say to a person who is struggling with addiction, well, just don't do that anymore.
Levant is recovering from a gambling addiction himself. He says it's true the industry supports treatment for compulsive gamblers, but by then, it's too late.
The moral equivalent of big tobacco is saying, let us do whatever we want with our cigarettes, as long as we pay for chemotherapy and hospice.
Instead, he says there needs to be a public health approach to prevent addiction. That means putting limits on marketing and types of gambling for everyone, not just those already in trouble. To make his case, Levant opens his laptop.
What's this?
He plays a corporate infomercial produced by a DraftKings subsidiary. The company goes on to boast about getting more people to gamble on sports through what's called micro-betting during live games.
We drive fan engagement by making every moment of every game a betting opportunity. Automatic, algorithmic.
Levant says that kind of engagement promotes addiction. DraftKings declined to comment. Those concerns are why Levant helped write the Safe Bet Act. But if it doesn't get through Congress, he says states need to act on their own. For example, a Massachusetts bill would create affordability checks to cap how much money some gamblers can lose. State Representative Lindsay Savadosa is a co-sponsor.
If you're only allowed to gamble $100 a day because that's an affordable amount, you're not going to go broke. You're still going to be able to pay your rent.
Even if states pass new rules, sports betting is here to stay. But public health leaders hope that they can still stop the spread of a new kind of gambling, iGaming. That's when you can play roulette or blackjack online. So far, it's legal in 7 states. For NPR News, I'm Karen Brown in Springfield, Massachusetts.
That story comes from NPR's partnership with New England Public Media and KFF Health News.
Drivers have been rushing to snag electric vehicles this month. That's because a hefty tax credit for buying clean vehicles expires today. As NPR's Camila Dominowski reports, EV sales have been supercharged.
The federal tax credit for electric vehicles is worth up to $7,500, or up to $4,000 on a used car, and it's available as a rebate at the time of purchase. The Republican tax and spend law this summer ended that credit on September 30th. Anyone planning to buy an EV suddenly had a four-figure reason to hurry. Matt Jones is with the car buying site TrueCar.
Yeah, the past couple weeks, even in the past several days, EV sales have just exploded. It's been bonkers.
The deadline is today, and to be more precise, buyers need to have a binding contract by midnight. It's okay if the actual car doesn't get delivered until later. The Tesla website has a countdown clock ticking away the seconds until the end of the day. Jeff Iosa says his Mercedes dealership in Connecticut has been cleaned out of EVs as the deadline approaches.
I don't have any vehicles left that I could lease to someone that's interested in taking advantage of this incentive.
The tax credit comes with strict eligibility requirements for purchased vehicles, things like where the car is built or making sure the buyer's income is not over a certain limit. But on leases, anything goes. Every leased EV can get it. That loophole outraged critics of this credit because rich people could benefit. It also created huge demand for EV leases. Iosa's got some cars he could sell without the tax credit, but everybody wants that discount. And after the tax credit goes away, EV sales, well, here's Iosa's prediction.
It's kind of going off a cliff, right?
All those people who raced to buy an EV early won't be buying one in, say, October. So just like the deadline inflated sales recently, it's going to deflate them in the weeks ahead. EV sales are still expected to grow long-term. Tax credit or no, there's a market for a car that's fun to drive and never needs a fill-up. But that growth is projected to be slower than it would have been if the subsidy stuck around. Camila Dominowski, NPR News.
At 6:18, you're listening to All Things Considered on News 88.7. 91 Fahrenheit, 33 Celsius right now here at the UH campus. I'm David Pevman. Out on the freeways, got a problem right on the edge of downtown, northbound 288, a record 69, taking out 2 centimeters.
Houston Public Media, in partnership with Texas Southern University, brings to you The Vibe, R&B, hip-hop, and neo-soul. Music that resonates with all ages. The Vibe on 88.7 HD3 and on the Houston Public Media app.
Did you know your gift to Houston Public Media could go twice or even 3 times as far through your employer's matching gift program? Many companies will match the charitable donations of their employees, and some even match gifts from retirees. That means your support for trusted news and programs could have double the impact for our community. Find out if your company participates at houstonpublicmedia.org/match.
Earlier this year, Houston Matters assembled the ultimate Houston sandwich using local ingredients and chefs. I'm Craig Cohen. On the next Houston Matters, our full menu foodies weigh in with their picks for the best sandwiches area restaurants have to offer. Join us tomorrow morning at 9.
Support comes from Elmore, communicating with clarity and inspiration, collaborating with executive leadership to create expert internal and external communication strategy. Elmore, listen, clarify, communicate. More at elmorepr.com.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from School of the Woods, founded in 1962, offering Montessori education from early childhood through grade 12. Enrollment is open now. More info at schoolofthewoods.org.
Plenty of people are feeling stuck in this economy. We'll hear how inflation, higher interest rates, and a slow-moving labor market are weighing on Americans. It's on Marketplace coming your way. 10 minutes here on News 88.7 and 620.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from CFP, Certified Financial Planner Professionals, committed to acting in their clients' best interests. Learn more at letsmakeaplan.org. From Amazon Business, offering business buying services from office supplies to IT essentials and maintenance tools to help bring visions to life. Learn more at amazonbusiness.com. And from the Skoll Foundation, dedicated to powering social innovators to transform the world. Learn more at skoll.org.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Scott Detrow in Washington.
And I'm Elsa Chang in San Francisco's Chinatown, where chef Kathy Fang has spent most of her life.
I never left, basically, like within these 2 blocks, because it's like I was born there, my doctor was there, the restaurant is there. Why leave? You have everything you need right here.
Her dad, Peter Fang, couldn't agree more.
They got a food, got a medical care, even some swimming fish that they like there. Shrimp, everything.
Peter Fang opened a restaurant here way back in 1988, shortly after immigrating here from Shanghai. He called it House of Nanking, and for years he was the only chef and cooked every single dish in one wok. Now, House of Nanking has become an iconic restaurant, and for the first time in 37 years, the Fang family is sharing their culinary secrets in a new cookbook. And today, we're going to cook our team of those dishes. We make a stop at our favorite vegetable market in Chinatown to pick up ingredients.
This is just called New Asia. You can see it used to be a restaurant.
Yeah, it's got crystal chandeliers, like 6 of them. Peter zips inside and makes a beeline straight for the baby ginger.
Beautiful, like a baby.
It's like a baby.
Baby skin.
Smooth baby skin ginger.
This grandfather.
Right. Wrinkly and tough skin. Peter, a man on a mission, swipes an entire shelf of roasted gluten into his basket.
Oh my God, Peter, how many boxes are you getting?
They don't have it all the time.
By the time we're leaving this market, our bags are fully loaded.
We brought dried shrimp, silk squash, guava thai, which is baby napa cabbage, and we also got Chinese bacon. This is going to be going into a few of our dishes today.
All of these ingredients feature in their new cookbook, which chronicles stories not only about their restaurant, but also about the family's struggles building it.
We're going to go up this way.
We head a few blocks down and into House of Nanking.
Here?
And the first thing you notice when you glance at the walls is Keanu Reeves staring back at you from like every direction.
Peter, there's so many pictures of Keanu Reeves visiting your restaurant here.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Because he made a movie here.
Which movie?
The new Matrix 4.
Oh.
But seriously, way before people like Keanu ever came here, times were really tough. In the early days, Peter says, this place was empty most every day and night. That is, until a review in the San Francisco Chronicle in 1989. It changed this place's fate. Literally overnight, people started lining up outside, just waiting to get in.
And then it just a boom. Wow, people, they're waiting for you to open the door.
Was that stressful or more exciting than stressful?
Okay, both. I know, it's a challenge. So first of all, you have to pick so many people, cook a lot of food. Well, I only have one wok.
Yeah, remember, there was only one wok in those days. And as a little girl, Kathy was put to work, folding napkins, filling up chili oil jars. Today, she is a full business partner with her dad, who's now 76 years old. I asked Peter to tell me what he thinks made House of Nanking such an enduring presence in a city that's already so full of Chinese restaurants.
The basic traditional Chinese cooking philosophy, that kind of things won't change. But for the ingredients, we have to use the local ingredients to learn how to use them. And you have to study what the other people they want. So if you cook your Chinese very bland food, they won't come in back again. There's no right or wrong. It's just the people like it or dislike.
And you think it's a good idea to adapt your cooking to please people? Because some chefs, they say this is the way I cook. If you don't like it, you don't need to cook.
Yeah, I understand that. A lot of chefs say, I do this.
I do it my way.
Yeah, I don't care you like it or you dislike it.
Right.
Well, I think that sometimes is not right.
Your purpose is to make people happy.
Making people happy.
I would compare this to the way that we treat the dining room as the way that we would treat, like, if you invited guests to your home. Because let's face it, this is our home, right? Like, we spend more time here than our actual home, right?
This is a house.
Yeah. House. There you go.
Also, Man King house.
So, Kathy, what was it like to grow up around House of Man King when you were a little girl?
I think in the very beginning, it was very exciting and new to me, right? I was seeing the restaurant getting built. My dad built all the shelves himself. So I saw something kind of come to life from nothing. And then I got to kind of experience the food that my dad was creating, how it started to evolve and change, the smells, learn how to interact with people. It was just like a very rambunctious and lively space to grow up in. And then I think like as I got older through high school and college, my parents knew that this was a very tough life. And they came here to give me better opportunities. So I never thought I would actually come back and do this. It wasn't until later when I did work in corporate America when I realized that this is incredibly boring, uninspiring, and what I grew up with was something that was far more exciting. So I came back.
Peter, how does it make you feel to watch your daughter do what you're doing, to eventually come back and enter the restaurant business and really appreciate the way she grew up and make it a permanent part of her own life?
First of all, I'm proud of my daughter, I say that. But she is going to better than me.
You believe she's going to be better than you?
Better than me. In many ways.
Your dad says he's so proud of you. What is it like to share his legacy with him now? To work alongside him?
The legacy aspect, I think, is very special because they were able to build an institution that, you know, has become like an icon, and I get to be a part of it, and I happen to be good at it. There's no way my dad would let me even touch this if I was like not good at it.
Right.
And so yeah, I can continue it on for them.
Well, I know that, Peter, you never liked writing menus, and you are known for ordering for your guests. So will you do us the pleasure of ordering some dishes for us that we can try today?
Sure, I love to do that.
Kathy then dashes into the kitchen, and in mere minutes, a parade of dishes arrives at our table.
So this one is the Wawa Thai baby Napa cabbage.
Wawa, yeah.
So for this one, I did it with like little dried baby shrimp that we got.
Then comes flowering cauliflower, speckled with Chinese bacon.
Oh, that's good. That's so good.
And never forget the restaurant's fried onion cakes with peanut sauce, delicate layers of flaky dough stuffed with scallions.
Which is like a house favorite, House of Man King favorite.
Do you want me to put some onion cake on yours plate? We eagerly scoop food onto each other's plates, making ourselves at home, just as chefs Peter and Kathy Fang have always intended.
Don't let the food get cold.
Their new cookbook is called House of Man King, Family Recipes from San Francisco's favorite Chinese restaurant.
At 6:29, you've been listening to All Things Considered on your NPR station, News 87. Marketplace is 1 minute away. And on the freeways, we are now up to two problems on 288, the newer one in Brazoria County southbound direction, right around County Road 101, also known as Bailey Road. We've got a wreck that has completely shut down the high occupancy toll roads there. And heading in on the northbound side of 288, we still have the one right at Highway 69 that's taking up 2 center lanes.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Terry Bryant Accident and Injury Law, sponsor of Hispanic Heritage Moments, committed to helping Houston injury victims get justice since 1985. Details at terrybryant.com.
Support comes from Alley Theater, presenting The Da Vinci Code. Symbologist Robert Langdon and cryptologist Sophie Naveau race to solve a puzzle that could change history. September 19th through October 19th. Tickets at alleytheater.org/code.
Marketplace is supported by JLL, providing tools to help businesses align their real estate with objectives as work evolves at unprecedented speed. JLL.com. JLL, see a brighter way.
The job market could make or break the economy right now. So how are we supposed to figure out what's going on if there is no jobs data? From American Public Media, this is Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Solidigm. Today's AI ambitions require a different approach to storage. Solidigm offers solid Progressive Insurance. Learn more about Progressive and bundling at progressive.com. And by Drexel University, whose cooperative education program provides students with opportunities to explore future careers and gain professional experience before graduation. More at drexel.edu.
In New York, I'm Kristen Schwab in for Kai Risdall. It's Tuesday, September 30th. Good to have you along. This is supposed to be a big week for jobs data. I say supposed to because, as of this broadcast, the government is heading toward a shutdown. If Congress and the president don't make a deal by midnight, all non-essential operations will pause. That means thousands of federal workers will be furloughed, including the people at the Bureau of Labor Statistics who work on the monthly jobs report that's scheduled to come out this Friday. No workers means no job report. To talk about what all this means, we called up Martha Gimbel. She's the executive director of the Budget Lab at Yale. Martha, thanks for being here.
Go straight on.
Thanks so much for having me.
So before we get to everything I just talked about with Friday jobs report, let's talk about some labor market data we do have that we got today. The job openings and labor turnover survey for August. What did you make of it?
So the thing that we saw from that survey, which we like to call JOLTS, is a real slowdown in hiring. There's not a huge amount of firing that's going on in this labor market right now. So if you've got a job and you're holding on to it, you're in okay shape. But hiring is now at, on average, levels that's more consistent with what we saw in 2010, 2011. Those were not years that people think of as being a great time to find a job.
So what does that tell you about what the economic outlook looks like?
You know, I think the thing that is a little bit scary at this exact moment is the labor market's been holding on because we haven't had a huge amount of firing. So job growth comes from both people not being fired, but also from people being hired. In a low hire environment, if things turn and employers give up and start firing people, we could see a rapid deterioration in the labor market. You've seen that somewhat in recent months when we've realized the labor market hasn't been as strong as it used to be. And it's yet another reason why we really need access to data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics to figure out what's going on right now.
Yeah, well, if we don't get that report on Friday, I'm wondering what kind of data hole this leaves us with. How crucial is that report to understanding where things are headed?
It's a pretty substantial hole. There isn't really anything that can make up for it. In past shutdowns, they have released things like the weekly claims report. We don't know if they will do that time. But I just want to go back to the point about how job growth is really a combination of both hiring and firing. If we get the weekly claims report, that will tell us about people getting fired, but it won't tell us about what's going on with hiring, which is a huge part of the question right now. And so frankly, we'll be flying blind at a relatively important time for the economy.
Yeah. How might this shutdown affect future data releases if it continues to, say, if it drags on?
We'll have to see how long it goes for, but in mid-October, the Bureau of Labor Statistics is going to start gathering data for the October jobs release. It also collects data for the inflation release throughout the month of October. It's been able to make that up in the past. But the Bureau of Labor Statistics does its job throughout the month, and it can't just come up with data that's high quality magically in a few days if you bring it back. And so the longer this goes on for, the harder it's going to be to get access to trustworthy data when we need it.
Go straight on. If we don't have data from the BLS, are there other places we can turn to fill the gaps?
We do have private sector data, particularly on the labor market. I should say, that data can be noisy. It's often benchmarked against the Bureau of Labor Statistics data. And right now, the economy is sort of in an uncertain point. And at moments like that, different private sector data series can point in multiple different directions. And so that can make it harder to say, we have private sector data for the labor market. We have much less private sector data for prices. And so if the inflation reports for October get screwed up, we don't have clear places in the private sector that we can turn to in the same way.
Yeah. I'm wondering for people who are listening to this on their way home from work, from the grocery store, if they're thinking, Martha, this is just data, it doesn't change my economy or how I feel about it, what do you say to that?
It absolutely may not change your economy or how you feel about it. But it may change the Federal Reserve's economy and how the Federal Reserve feels about it. The Federal Reserve is in a really tricky position right now, and they are trying to figure out where the economy is heading and how they can best set up interest rate policy for this very, very complicated environment where you have a weakening labor market but also strengthening inflation. And what the Federal Reserve decides to do affects all of us. It is incredibly important that the Federal Reserve has access to the best quality data so they can make the best quality decision for the economy. And so that's the real concern here.
Martha Gimbel is the Executive Director of the Budget Lab at Yale. Thanks, Martha.
Thanks for having me.
Wall Street today appeared to be worried about a government shutdown and then decided not to be. All of the details when we do the numbers. Has mostly shaken off the news of the day. The looming government shutdown, a stagnant labor market, and everything else. Bond markets have been digesting the news a little differently. The yield on the 10-year T-note has been falling over the last couple of days. So what are bond markets trying to tell us? Marketplace's Justin Ho explains.
The big signal that bond markets are sending us this week is that they're a little nervous about what's going on in Washington.
If we do get the shutdown, how long is that shutdown going to be?
That's Chuck Tomes with Manulife Investment Management. He says markets are concerned in large part because this potential shutdown could have a real impact on the broader economy.
There's different numbers that people have thrown out there, anywhere from 0.1 to 0.2 drag on quarterly GDP growth every week that the shutdown lasts.
Then there's that likelihood that a shutdown will cause the government to withhold upcoming economic data releases, including Friday's jobs report.
And anytime you have some uncertainty, people get a little bit nervous and move towards more flight to quality type investments, and you're seeing that happen in the treasury market overall.
And more demand for those safe treasuries pushes down their yields. Thing is, government bond yields have been trending lower for months now, which has more to do with the labor market, says Randy Vogel, head of fixed income with Wilmington Trust.
The market's grown a bit concerned, as has the Fed, about the weakening in the labor market, and that's kept the Fed engaged with rate cuts.
Vogel says many investors are deciding to buy bonds now before rates fall further.
It could be pension funds looking to lock in yields at those rates because they think in the future rates are coming down. It could be a retail investor who's looking at a treasury or a corporate and thinking the same thing.
But demand for government bonds hasn't been uniform. John Canavan, lead market analyst at Oxford Economics, says investors are still nervous about inflation, partly because of tariffs, and also because consumer and business spending has held up.
We've seen better than expected durable goods orders recently, better than expected consumer spending figures recently.
As a result, Canavan says investors are more leery about piling money into longer-term bonds, since inflation looks like it'll be sticking around.
Which means that long-term yields, because of the inflation concerns, will not fall as quickly as short-term yields will, as investors demand greater yield for the inflation risks over a longer period of time.
In other words, the bond market is sending us signals that it's concerned, but it's also telling us that the economy is still humming along. I'm Justin Ho for Marketplace.
Another week, another tariff announcement from the White House. I know, at this point, it can feel a bit potato, but each tariff move affects a new industry. This time, it's housing. A new 10% import tax on softwood lumber and timber will go into effect mid-October, at the same time as the previously announced 25% tariffs on kitchen cabinets, bathroom vanities, and upholstered furniture. The Trump administration says those tariffs could increase even more come January. Marketplace's Samantha Fields looks at how these taxes could affect home builders and buyers.
If you go into a Home Depot or a Lowe's, you'll see a whole lot of lumber.
2x4s, 2x6s, studs.
Greg Kuda at Westline Capital Strategies says much of it was once Canadian pine trees.
That's ultimately used to frame the walls, the floors, the roofs, the trusses of single family, multi-family, commercial, residential buildings.
Canadian softwood lumber is popular with home builders. And right now, Chris Beard at John Burns Research and Consulting says there is a lot of it sitting around.
There's been talk throughout this summer of what we call like a wall of wood, literally like piles and piles and piles of Canadian lumber stacked up at U.S. distributors and dealers.
That's because producers and importers rushed extra inventory into the country earlier this summer to try to get ahead of tariffs Trump implemented back in August, specifically on Canadian lumber. So even though tariffs are higher now than they were a couple of months ago, lumber prices are lower because of that oversupply and because demand in the housing market has been weak. But Beard says those lower prices are unlikely to last.
This wall of wood, if you will, is going to get drawn down, and so that will eventually probably be reflected in the prices.
About 80% of the softwood lumber the U.S. imports comes from Canada. In a couple of weeks, it will be subject to this new 10% tariff on top of the 35% import tax that's already in place. And Beard says,
certainly that cost can't be eaten by just the importers.
Who will ultimately have to eat the increased cost is still an open question, says Rachel Brewster, a professor at Duke Law School.
It's either going to be borne by the consumer directly and raise housing prices, or, a lot of American builders are simply going to internalize those costs, and it's going to decrease their own profits. But the tariffs are a tax.
And one way or another, someone will have to pay it. I'm Samantha Fields for Marketplace.
The newish trend of combing through TikTok, and increasingly, there are chatbots. OpenAI is rolling out a new instant checkout feature for some items on Etsy and Shopify merchants like Skims and Glossier. Paid and free users of ChatGPT can hit the buy button without navigating out of the chat. OpenAI says it's the first step towards agentic commerce, where AI could eventually shop for us, though humans are still in the driver's seat in this iteration. Marketplace's Megan McCarty-Carino has more.
Greg Zakowicz is in the market for a cappuccino maker, but not just any cappuccino maker.
So yesterday I got on ChatGPT and I'm like, all right, give me a cappuccino maker under $300 that has, minimal plastic internal components. And I just do this quick thing and I get my results.
Zakowicz is a senior e-commerce expert at marketing platform OmniSend, which found that just like him, almost 60% of consumers are now using chatbots to shop online.
They're still doing the search like they always would, but they're replacing Google with ChatGPT or Claude, whoever they're using.
He says consumers increasingly trust chatbot product recommendations more than Google search. AI can summarize reviews and narrow down results to a few key options with minimal instructions. So why not let the bot handle the purchase too?
This happens over and over and over again.
Sucharita Kadali is an e-commerce analyst at Forrester.
Every large tech company goes through this cycle where they think, we're going to own commerce now.
Meta, Twitter, Pinterest, Snapchat, TikTok, and Google have all tried to bring shopping transactions directly onto their platforms, with mixed results. One perennial challenge is getting retailers to give up their direct link to consumers, says analyst Andrew Lipsman with Media Ads and Commerce.
Retailers will want to keep their own data closer to the vest, don't want to drive traffic through the front door of their site, and so they have less reason to participate.
Because that data on purchases is valuable for advertising, says analyst Eric Suford at Mobile Dev Memo.
You need to know what people have bought recently and what people have searched for recently. And without that data, you can't do proper targeting.
Which, he says, may give a hint as to why so many tech companies have tried this approach.
My sense is OpenAI can make a lot of money with ads. They just need to do it in a way that doesn't sit at odds or doesn't feel hostile to the core product experience.
OpenAI says it will receive a small fee from participating merchants, but products available for instant checkout won't be favored in the list of results. I'm Megan McCarty-Carino for Marketplace.
When it comes to sensory-friendly haircuts, the biggest thing is patience and compassion.
How a barber is making the industry more inclusive, one haircut at a time. But first, let's do the numbers. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 81 points, just under 0.2%, to finish at 46,397. The Nasdaq added 68 points, 0.3%, to close at 22,660. And the S&P 500 gained 27 points, 0.4%, to end at 6688. Boeing is developing a new aircraft to replace its troubled 737 MAX, according to the Wall Street Journal. The plane maker descended 0.6%. Bonds fell, yield on the 10-year T-note rose to 4.14%. You're listening to Marketplace.
The Numbers is supported by Odoo.com, your entire business on one platform. Marketplace is supported by Yubico, makers of the YubiKey, protecting the applications and accounts that people and businesses rely on every day. YubiKey helps stop phishing attempts and hackers. YubiKey, still undefeated, the original passkey. More at Yubico.com. And by Michigan Technological University, where students in the Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering lead real-world aerospace projects for NASA, GE Aerospace, and more. Online at mtu.edu/MAE.
At 6:48, you're listening to News 88.7. Back out onto 288, still have a problem in Brazoria County southbound. It has shut down the managed lanes at County Road 101, also blocking the left main lane there. You're going to be on brakes from McCard, and northbound 288, the record 69 as well.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Drexel University, whose cooperative education program positions students to explore future careers and discover their passions before graduation. More about experiential education at drexel.edu.
Support also comes from members like you and from St. Luke's Health and St. Luke's Foundation, supporting clinical excellence, compassionate care, and a healthier future for all. More information at supportstlukes.org. From Carr, Riggs, and Ingram CPAs and Advisors, a top 25 nationally ranked full-service accounting and advisory firm offering tax, audit, accounting, consulting, and advisory services. Learn more at cricpa.com. And from Theater Under the Stars, with a production of the Broadway musical comedy, the 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. It's on stage at the Hobby Center October 21st through November 2nd. Tickets available at tux.org. At 6:49.
This is Marketplace. I'm Kristen Schwab. We talked about this a bit on yesterday's show, that there's a sense that parts of the economy, whether it's jobs or housing, are just kind of stuck. We're in this loop where economic uncertainty is making people press pause, and people pressing pause is fueling economic uncertainty. Abba Badarai recently wrote about this. She's an economics correspondent at the Washington Post. Abba, it's great to talk to you again.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you for the opportunity.
So your story talks about two major pieces of the economy that are at a standstill. Let's start with housing. What's happening there?
Well, home sales have bottomed out after the pandemic. We're seeing high interest rates. We're seeing really high home prices, and that's deterred a lot of people from buying homes right now. For people who already have homes, it's not really a problem unless, they want to move, but a lot of folks have locked in very low mortgage rates. They've refinanced at maybe 2 or 3%, and it doesn't make sense to get up and leave right now.
And then the second pillar of your story is jobs. Fill me in on that piece.
That's right. So the job market isn't terrible on the surface. The unemployment rate is relatively low, but it's really difficult to find a job if you don't already have one right now. Hiring has stalled. Businesses are holding off on adding new positions, and a lot of people who are out there are saying, it's never been this hard to find a job. They're feeling really crummy about their prospects.
Tell Tell me more about two of the people you interviewed in your story and their job prospects and how those stories show up in the economy.
So I talked to Jacinda Snyder, who is 23 years old. She lives in South Carolina in a rural town, and she just graduated from college with this degree in environmental science. But she says she feels completely stuck in just about every way. She doesn't have a car, so that gives her very limited mobility to, access jobs. She's been applying to hundreds of jobs, but has gotten nothing so far. And so she's stuck living at home. She can't really afford to move, and it's really hard for her to, sort of change her situation at the moment.
You also interviewed a man who lost his government contracting job and took a job at the grocery store. My question is, he's still working, but I'm wondering how that downshift kind of shows up in the greater economy.
That's a great question, and we're seeing that across the board. For younger people, for older people, a lot of the folks who have lost their jobs in the last year have said that they just haven't been able to find anything. So they are maybe relying on gig work or they're working part-time. In this case, the man that I talked to, Charles, is 64 and lives in Maryland. He's working at a grocery store part-time. And he says, his quote was, "It feels like I'm treading water right now. I know where I want to be going, but I just kind of can't get there. I'm stuck."
The Fed just cut interest rates a quarter point, and the idea here, right, is that cheaper borrowing is supposed to juice the economy, but one of your sources says no. Tell us a little bit more about why that might not fix all of this standstill.
The Federal Reserve controls just one interest rate, and that's a very short-term interest rate that banks use to lend to each other overnight, and it doesn't necessarily translate into lower mortgage rates. It might, sometimes it does, but there's a lot more economic uncertainty on the horizon as well that is keeping interest rates, including for mortgages, elevated at the moment.
So then what's the answer? How do we unstick the economy?
Gosh.
We all only do.
Yeah, we're in this holding pattern because of uncertainty for the most part. I mean, business owners will tell you that things just feel really scary right now. It doesn't make sense to invest. It doesn't make sense to hire. And I think a lot of households are feeling the same way. And so until that changes, until we start to see more spending, both from businesses and from households, I think we're going to be stuck here.
What do you say to someone who says, Abba, this is just a standstill blip in time, this too shall pass?
That is exactly what the Trump administration is hoping is the case. They're saying that this is just a momentary blip. We're going to get things moving shortly. There's going to be plentiful jobs in the economy. Homes are going to be affordable again. And this is, just a temporary period that we're having to weather through in the meantime.
Abba Badarai covers economics for The Washington Post. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you so much.
There are jobs out there that have been around for a long, long time. We're talking hundreds of years of craft. But even the most established of professions benefit from innovation and inclusivity. That brings me to today's installment of our series, My Economy.
My name is Henry Tribes Amoja. I am a 10-year veteran barber, and I am in Dallas, Texas. Going to college in northern Minnesota, there wasn't too many options as far as finding a barber who understood the nuances of my texture of hair. And I pretty much just went to Walmart, picked up a pair of clippers, and I started cutting my own hair. And then I kind of just started doing haircuts in the dorm room bathrooms. So I could literally remember doing free haircuts for my roommates, and it just kind of snowballed from there. By the time I graduated college, I pretty much already knew what I wanted to do. So I just went straight to barber school, and I became a licensed barber in August of 2015, and I've been a professional barber ever since. February 2024, I bought my wife a wedding blanket, and it was just like a light bulb moment. Oh my God, this would be incredible if it was in the form of a haircutting cake. So last June 2024, finally launched it, and people just quickly told me that it would be very beneficial for neurodivergent individuals, especially kids who struggle with haircuts. So, as somebody who didn't at the time really know anyone who was on the spectrum or anyone who was neurodivergent, I went down the rabbit hole of joining every single autism-specific Facebook group out there, and then connected with a lady from a nonprofit called the Century Safe Solution, and they pretty much go around worldwide certifying barbers and stylists to provide autism-affirming or neuro-affirming haircuts. And I immediately got certified. I officially did my first sensory haircut December of 2024, and now I'm doing 15 a week or 60 a month. So when it comes to sensory-friendly haircuts, the biggest thing is patience and compassion. And then you also have to be a problem solver. So that means you have to be adaptable, because no two sessions are the same, and no two individuals on the spectrum are the same. Now, the way I set myself up for success is a lot of the work is done before my sensory kids come in. You book a phone consultation with me, and then you fill out like a 20-question questionnaire, and it just kind of helps me come up with a plan to ensure a successful sensory-friendly haircut session. And these kids actually love getting haircuts. They might struggle through the process, but when they look in the mirror, you can see them just kind of flash that big smile, and it's just like the most rewarding thing ever. But I think what I've been able to provide for these families is just a sense of trust and what's possible. Okay, if it's possible for a barber to offer this level of professionalism and care and accommodation for my child, what else is possible?
Henry Tribe Samoloja in Dallas, Texas. You can tell us about your economy at marketplace.org/myeconomy.
Marketplace is supported by Bitwarden. Wearing costumes to mask personal identities is a Halloween tradition. Bitwarden is a password management solution that can help disguise account information and identities from cyber creeps online all year long. Available at bitwarden.com. And by Odoo, dedicated to providing software designed to scale with businesses. Odoo's programs for manufacturing, accounting, and more aim to provide building blocks for creating a custom software suite. Odoo, what businesses need.
This final note on the way out today. We spent the top of the show focused on jobs, but another data set came out this morning. The Conference Board says consumer confidence fell more than expected in September to a 5-month low. Americans' biggest worries include inflation and, to bring this full circle, what we started talking about at the top of the show, the job market. Jordan Manji, Zonil Maharaj, Janet Wynn, Olga Oxman, Virginia K. Smith, and Tony Wagner are the digital team. I'm Kristen Schwab. We'll be back here tomorrow. This is 8 p.m.
We're a minute away from 7 on a Tuesday evening here on your NPR station, News 87. One last look at the drive home finds that we still have that problem in Brazoria County. Southbound 288, the managed lanes are shut down for Rankin County Road 101. And heading out on the North Freeway, northbound 45 at Cavalcade. Right taking up 2 right lanes.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, a workers' compensation provider committed to helping Texas communities and emphasizing safety. More at texasmutual.com/TexansGetIt.
We're 8 minutes away from sunset. It will be clear overnight with a low around 72. Quarter after 7 for the sunrise tomorrow. It will be sunny with highs back in the lower 90s. Right now it's 89 degrees here at your NPR station, KUHF Houston News 88.7, service of the University of Houston. I'm David Pittman. Thank you for letting us be a part of your life today. We'll do it all over again tomorrow afternoon at 7 o'clock.
I think it's fairly telling that we felt compelled to ask about this, but we did. And only 18% of voters say that American democracy isn't strong enough to survive the Trump years.
I'm Natalie Kitroeff. That's coming up on the Daily from the New York Times.
The Daily is supported by Seed. Seed's DS-01 is a 24-strain 2-in-1 probiotic and prebiotic engineered to revive digestion, support healthy regularity, and promote whole body health. Learn more at seed.com/public.
You're listening to The Daily from the New York Times, distributed by American Public Media. APM produces and distributes programs that entertain and engage audiences everywhere.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Ryland Barton. It's just 4 hours until a likely government shutdown after Congress failed to pass a pair of bills that would have kept federal agencies open past midnight tonight. The White House is blaming congressional Democrats for it, but as NPR's Tamara Keith reports, President Trump also says it may present an opportunity to lay off workers and cut programs.
White House staff put a video on loop in the press briefing room with old clips of congressional Democrats talking about what a bad idea government shutdowns are. President Trump said the last thing he'd want to do is shut it down.
But a lot of good can come down from shutdowns. We can get rid of a lot of things that we didn't want, and they'd be Democrat things, but they want open borders. They want men playing in women's sports. They want transgender for everybody. They never stop.
The White House has also threatened mass firings of federal workers. Democrats are pressing the White House and Republicans to negotiate with them on health care. Tamara Keith, NPR News, the White House.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth told a gathering of top generals and admirals that he's overhauling military standards and gender rules. As NPR's Tom Bowman explains, it could lead to a dramatic drop of women in combat.
What he said about toughening physical fitness standards for those in combat jobs who are talking armor, artillery, infantry, and he said he wants men and women to achieve, quote, the highest male standard in such things as, lifting weights, dragging a sled that stands in for a wounded comrade, carrying an ammo box, running. So in general, more weight, more pull-ups, faster times. There are some 600 female Marines in those jobs, roughly 3,000, 4,000 Army women in combat jobs. One Marine officer I spoke with who's well-versed on fitness tests estimated you could lose more than 20% of women in those jobs if they have to meet the highest male standard. The officer spoke on condition of anonymity because he's not authorized to speak publicly.
NPR's Tom Bowman reporting. President Trump says that the National Institutes of Health will invest in data sharing to boost the use of AI in detecting and treating pediatric cancers. NPR's Yuki Noguchi reports this comes amid massive cuts in federal funding for scientific and medical research.
The Trump administration says it's committing an additional $50 million to an NIH program to build on ways to apply AI to fighting cancer. Michael Kratsios directs the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy.
Using artificial intelligence, researchers will be able to, for example, build scalable models to predict how a child's body responds to therapy, letting doctors forecast cancer progression and minimize treatment side effects.
The $50 million investment comes on the heels of billions in federal cuts to various health agencies involved with cancer prevention and research. Yuki Noguchi, NPR News.
This is NPR News from Washington. Turning Point USA's college tour is returning to Utah for the first time since founder Charlie Kirk was assassinated. His death at Utah Valley University galvanized followers of his right-wing conservative politics. The event at Utah State tomorrow will feature podcaster Alex Clark, Senator Mike Lee, and Governor Spencer Cox. President Trump's ambassador to the UN is criticizing Rwanda and the rebels it backs in eastern Congo. As NPR's Michelle Kellerman reports, that's a conflict President Trump has repeatedly said he's resolved.
Peace in the Democratic Republic of the Congo is so far mostly a promise. That's how the head of the UN peacekeeping mission, Bintou Keita, described the situation at a UN Security Council meeting.
There are discrepancies between the progress we see on paper and the reality we observe on the ground, which continues to be marked with violence.
That violence is fueled by a thorny mix of competition over precious mineral resources and decades-long ethnic tensions. Keita says 1,000 civilians have been killed since June. U.S. Ambassador Mike Waltz says the Trump administration backs the UN peacekeeping force, and he blames M23 rebels and the Rwandan Defense Forces of prolonging the suffering in eastern Congo. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
The cost of home repair is rising faster than inflation, according to a new report. Data analytics company Verisk says labor costs, especially for projects like tile flooring and bathroom remodeling, are driving the increase. I'm Ryland Barton. This is NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include 20th Century Studios with Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere, a pivotal chapter in the life of an icon, starring Jeremy Allen White and Jeremy Strong, in theaters October 24th. Tickets available now.
Hello? Yeah, hi. My name's Claire Tennisgetter. I work for the New York Times. Do you have 5 to 10 minutes of chat? I believe you took part in one of our polls recently. Sure, why not? Sure, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. From the New York Times, I'm Natalie Kitrow. This is The Daily.
How would you sum up your feelings about Trump's second term so far in one word? One word? Gee, let's see. Great. Excellent. Cautious optimism. Uneven. Chaotic.
Horrible. Embarrassing.
Terrifying.
Today, in a major new poll, the New York Times asked voters what they thought of the first 8 months of President Trump's second term.
I think the majority of his policies are heading in the right direction.
The economy or the prices are starting to come down. I wish they'd come down more. It's a period that's seen sweeping policy changes that have left little of the country untouched.
One of the biggest reasons that I voted for him was southern border, but the way ICE is doing it is so horrible.
I think he's doing a good job, but the one thing I wish that he would do is create some type of program where the people that are already here start a process where you could get legalization.
I guess that I'm shocked at some of his actions and disappointed in him. Maybe generally I wish I had voted for him.
My colleague Nate Cohn explains what the survey found and what it may tell us about where the country is heading next.
Turn right. We need to tone down the rhetoric. We need to work to find common ground and work through differences in opinions.
It's Tuesday, September 30th. Nate, I've been really looking forward to talking to you because so much has happened over the past several months since you were last on the show. Top line, what did you find?
Well, after interviewing more than 1,300 Americans from across the country last week, we found almost the exact same results that we did in April on most of the important questions, despite all that's transpired over the last 5 or 6 months. Trump's approval rating is 1 point different than it was in April. It's at 43% now. The Democrats are up 2 points in the race for Congress compared to 3 in April. On almost every issue that we asked about, the results are just within a couple points of what they were 6 months ago.
Okay, that is not what I was expecting. How is it possible that when so much has changed, the views have essentially remained the same?
I think it's worth going back to where we were when we conducted our last poll. This was just after the Liberation Day tariffs were announced. It was when Kilmar Abrego Garcia was in El Salvador. DOJ was still around and cutting government programs left and right.
Right.
And at that time, Donald Trump was suffering a clear political cost for the excesses of his actions. On everything we asked, voters said he was going too far, and his ratings had declined since the election. Now, what's happened since then? He's pulled back on many of the things I just mentioned. He's also gone further in a whole bunch of areas. But the accumulated effect hasn't necessarily been to worsen his position politically since April. The voters who he still had with him in April were mostly strongly Republican-leaning voters, voters who backed him in 2016 and 2020 and 2024. And they've stuck by his side over the last few months.
You're saying basically Trump's approval numbers have remained stable, but they're at a pretty low point.
Correct.
You mentioned Kilmar Abrego Garcia and that people really didn't like the excesses of the administration on immigration. So let's talk about those policies because, as you noted, more has happened along those lines. There has been, in many ways, an escalation of some of those aggressive enforcement approaches. More raids, more protests about those raids. So what are people saying about immigration now?
Well, I think that the public is of two minds about the immigration issue right now. On the one hand, the public still supports deporting undocumented immigrants back to their home countries. On the other hand, voters do think that the president's going too far. And what we did ask was whether they thought that the process for deportation was generally fair or unfair. And most voters thought it was unfair. But between these two, you can see a public that's kind of caught in between support of a general goal and being kind of repelled by the actual way the administration is going about its immigration policy.
Yeah, what do you make of that? Because it sounds like they want the thing that he's pursuing, but they don't like what he's actually doing to get there.
We have a couple of ways of getting at how people feel overall about the administration's policy. One is to ask whether they approve or disapprove of his handling of immigration, and the other is whether he's gone too far, or he's handling it about right, or hasn't gone far enough. And on both of those questions, voters sort out to a negative view of the president. They disapprove of his handling of immigration, and they think he's gone too far. Now, it's worth noting that in each case, the results are really not that different than April. So, although the president has sort of gone further in terms of undertaking more actions that go beyond what someone might have wanted, he hasn't necessarily convinced more people in doing so that he's gone too far.
In terms of the potential for excesses, Nate, did you specifically ask about the deployment of the U.S. military into American cities? I mean, because in L.A. and now in Portland, the deployment has been intended to reinforce ICE's agenda. In D.C., it was more squarely about reducing crime. But overall, do people see that as an overreach?
They do. We asked specifically whether the president had gone too far in deploying the National Guard to American cities. 53% said that he did. We also asked whether they approved of his deployment to Washington, D.C. specifically. A majority of voters said they disapproved. And voters do have real concerns about the president's deployment of military forces as well. More people were concerned that the president could use the National Guard to intimidate his political opponents than were concerned that crime would spiral out of control without the National Guard. But there are a number of voters who are really concerned about crime. And although they may think the president has gone too far, they sympathize with the direction of his effort. And indeed, crime is the issue in the poll where he has his strongest overall approval rating. Now, it's not a great approval rating, but it's better than everything else.
Got it. So it sounds like voters may not like the means that Trump is using in these cases, but they do approve of the ends, of the goals on both immigration and public safety. It kind of seems as though people have settled out. They've decided early on in this presidency how they feel, and they haven't changed much.
I think that's right. I think that most voters at this stage know where they stand on what this second Trump term looks like, which is being really aggressive about trying to fulfill the core promises of the American First agenda, whether it's on immigration, crime, and so on. And for a lot of the voters that put him over the top in the last election, this is too much, and they decided that pretty quickly. And for the voters that weren't repelled by his conduct in the first few months, there's been nothing about what he's done since then that's changed their mind. Even if he's gone too far, they still appreciate that he is trying to fulfill objectives that they care about.
Nate, where do people stand on the economy at this moment?
Well, they don't think the economy is very good. Only 26% of voters think the economy is good. Voters are much likelier to say that Trump has made the economy worse than say he has made it better. The proportion who say he's making it worse is at 45%. And his approval rating on the economy is pretty similar to his approval rating on everything else, which is to say that only 44% of people think he's doing a good job handling economic issues. It's worth remembering that in his first term, and also during his re-election campaign, that the economy was a big strength. And it's not a big strength for him right now.
I mean, how much of a red alert warning sign should this be for him?
Well, I think that the economy has not only been his strongest issue, but it's been really critical to winning over the voters who are on the margins of the Trump coalition. We talk all the time about his MAGA base, right? But what wins the voters in the middle, whether it's working class white voters in Ohio or working class Latino voters in the Rio Grande or the young voters that were dissatisfied, the economy is really critical to what gets him over the top. So, at least for now, the state of the economy as it is, we're kind of muddling along, right? We're not in some deep recession, but these aren't great prosperous times either. Muddling along doesn't really threaten his base at this point, but I think it makes it really hard for him to win back the voters that have put him over the top in recent elections.
But the midterms are coming. It would seem like that could be an opportunity for Democrats. People care a lot about the economy, and they hold the party in power accountable, right?
I think that's reasonable to expect. The poll right now shows Democrats are up 2 on the question of whether to vote for Democrats or Republicans in the midterm election. It's worth noting that's quite a bit better than the result of the 2024 election for Democrats. The Republicans won by 3. So this is a meaningful improvement. It would probably be enough for them to retake the House. It's also not an extraordinary performance, right? They're not winning by 7 or 8 points like they were in 2018. I will point out also that the Democrats have made their biggest gains compared to 2024 among young and non-white voters, the voters that swung most towards Donald Trump in 2024 because of the bad economy. That's the group that in the poll looks like it's lurching back towards Democrats. And the economy, I think, very well might be an important part of why those voters have swung back to the extent they have. Now, there are limits to what this lead means. And if the Democrats are looking for a sweeping repudiation of Donald Trump, I don't see how they could look at these poll results and see that on the horizon. And I think that is sort of what Democrats are looking for. Bottom line, when I look at this poll, I see lots of signs that voters are dissatisfied with Donald Trump and think he's gone too far. I don't see any evidence that voters are looking to buy what the Democrats are selling either. There's a lot of room to disagree with Donald Trump without agreeing with the Democrats. And one of the most interesting things about this poll is that the economic and policy issues that we've been talking about do not rank highest on the minds of voters right now. They say that other issues are more important problems. And that is not something that I have seen before.
We'll be right back.
The Daily is supported by BetterHelp, committed to supporting mental health through therapy and helping clients find balance. Clients are matched with one of 30,000 therapists for online therapy from anywhere at betterhelp.com/public. And by Legacy Box, committed to saving aging tapes and photos by bringing them to life in digital form, then making them accessible in Legacy Box Cloud. Learn more at legacybox.com.
Get the story firsthand with The Daily from the New York Times, distributed by American Public Media.
We know you value Houston Public Media. That's why you're listening right now. Take the next steps and become a new member of the station you rely on. Every gift makes a difference. And what matters most right now is supporting the station that brings you the news and information you rely on. It only takes a few minutes to make a big difference. Join as a new member today at HoustonPublicMedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
You come to the New Yorker Radio Hour for conversations that go deeper with people you really want to hear from, whether it's Bruce Springsteen or Questlove or Olivia Rodrigo, Liz Cheney, or some of my extraordinarily well-informed colleagues at the New Yorker. So join us every week on the New Yorker Radio Hour for real conversations that matter.
The New Yorker Radio Hour, Sundays at 9 a.m. on News 88.7.
This is The Daily. I'm Natalie Kittrow. Back to my conversation with Nate Cohn about what a major new Times poll found about how voters grade President Trump's performance in his second term. Nate, if no one policy issue, including the economy, was the most important concern for people in this poll, what was?
So in basically every poll for as long as we've been doing this, we ask people an open-ended question. What's the most important problem facing the country today? What's the most important issue? And most of the time, the answer is about the economy, jobs, cost of living, and so on, economic issues. In this poll, for the first time, the most common answers were about our politics.
What do you think is the most important problem facing the country today?
I think our political division. It's division amongst the nation, the people.
Nobody's listening to anybody on either side.
People can't share ideas and opinions without being targeted by violence.
Things remind me of what was going on in Germany around like 1939.
It frightens me